My in-laws secretly took my sister on their family vacation, excluding me, until I exposed the truth about her bloodline and made her world fell apart. I, 27 female, have been married to my husband, 30, for almost a year. We've been together for 2 years before that, and since we lived away from our respective homes, our families had also met only a couple of times, and everyone had to fly out here just to meet us. My husband hadn't met my sister until the wedding because the timing just hadn't worked out. She was still in school, and she was a straight A student, so she wasn't willing to skip school either. So she'd mostly Skype me, and that's the only time we talk face to face. My husband had seen my sister and spoke to her a couple of times on Skype, but in person he'd only met her at our wedding. My sister and I look really different, so much so that our relatives used to say that people wouldn't even be able to tell that we were sisters just by looking at us. That turned out to be true, lol. At the wedding, my sister decided to let her real hair color show since she'd been dyeing her hair all sorts of crazy colors ever since she was 15. Both my husband and sister have dark hair and dark eyes, while I had blonde hair and green eyes. So some of our guests even thought that my sister was my husband's sister instead because the resemblance was so striking. We laughed it off that day, but after that, something changed about my husband's behavior whenever I would bring up my sister. I think people can already guess where this is going. It's been almost a year since our wedding, and last week my husband told me that he was going to be out for a week for a business trip, and I was all right with it. But 2 days later, I learned from one of my mother-in-law's friends that they were all together on some beach and had even sent her a picture. I could see my little sister in the background of the selfie that my mother-in-law had clicked, and I was so shocked because both my husband and my sister had been lying to me, and that was just so strange. My mother-in-law's friend had even contacted me to tell me that she hoped I'd get well soon because my mother-in-law had told her that I'd have to skip the family vacation since I twisted my ankle. I was completely fine, and they just hadn't told me a thing about the vacation. As a matter of fact, everyone had lied to me just so that I wouldn't suspect a thing. I knew that my husband's family always took family trips once a year, and the past 2 years I'd even accompanied them, so this was just so weird to me. In the midst of my growing confusion and suspicion, I made the choice to reach out to my husband first, dialing his number with a mix of anxiety and determination. When there was no answer, I tried my sister next, sending texts and calling repeatedly, but the silence from both ends only deepened my unease. It felt like a wall had suddenly been erected between us, leaving me isolated in my own home. Desperate for answers, I turned to my mother-in-law as a last resort. Knowing she might avoid my usual number if things were amiss, I cleverly used my work line, a secondary phone I keep for professional calls, which she wouldn't recognize. To my relief, she picked up after just a few rings. Without any preamble or small talk, I dove straight into the confrontation, laying out what I'd discovered about the supposed family vacation and demanding an explanation for the lies that seemed to swirl around it all. At first, she stumbled over her words, clearly caught off guard, her voice faltering as she grasped for some plausible excuse. The hesitation in her tone only fueled my heartbreak. I was adrift in a sea of betrayal, feeling utterly lost and vulnerable in that moment. Overwhelmed by the pain, I issued an ultimatum that came from a place of raw desperation. If she didn't reveal the full truth right then and there, I would have no choice but to initiate divorce proceedings against my husband immediately. That threat, I believe, struck a chord of fear in her, prompting her to finally open up and disclose the shocking reality of what had been hidden from me. Even now, 2 full days after that fateful conversation, the weight of her revelations lingers heavily on me, leaving me in a state of emotional turmoil that I can't quite shake. As the pieces began to fall into place during our talk, it became painfully clear, what many might have suspected from the clues I'd shared earlier was indeed the truth. My husband and my younger sister share a biological connection as half-siblings. This bombshell traced back to events from over a decade after my own birth, when my mother, in a moment of indiscretion, engaged in an extramarital affair with a man introduced to her through mutual acquaintances. Tragically, that individual turned out to be none other than my present father-in-law, weaving an unexpected and complicated thread through our family histories. To provide some context for why I dwelled earlier on the details of our appearances, particularly the hair colors, it all tied into this deception. My mother had naturally possessed blonde hair throughout her life, a trait she passed on to me, but following my sister's arrival, she abruptly began coloring it brown to align with the darker shade my sister was born with. In an effort to maintain the facade, my parents concocted a story for my young ears, claiming that brown was actually my mother's true color and that she'd been dyeing it blonde for years out of personal preference. Being only 10 at the time, innocent and trusting, I accepted this explanation without a second thought, never probing deeper into the inconsistency. Looking back now, with the clarity of hindsight, I realized this was a calculated move on their part to deflect any potential questions or suspicions from others. Why would a child born to a dirty blonde father and a blonde mother emerge with distinctly brown hair? It was a subtle but effective cover to preserve the family's outward normalcy and avoid the scandal that could have unraveled everything. Sadly, my mother passed away a few years prior to my meeting and falling in love with my husband, so she was never in a position to confess this chapter of her life to me directly, sparing me the pain at the time but also leaving me in the dark. Even more disheartening, my own father, who had been privy to the affair all along, chose to keep it buried, never breathing a word about the betrayal that had tested their marriage. On the other side of this tangled web, my father-in-law remains a distant figure in my life. I've encountered him only once, briefly at our wedding, where he didn't linger long enough to form any real impression or connection. Given his short stay, it's unlikely he even crossed paths with my sister during the event, and from what I've gathered, he was completely unaware of her existence as his biological child. According to my father's solemn assurances, once my mother discovered her pregnancy, she severed all ties with her lover, my father-in-law, and came clean to my dad about the infidelity. In a display of forgiveness and commitment, they opted to repair their relationship and raise the child together as their own, without involving the other man. For his part, my father-in-law apparently expressed no desire to claim paternity or insert himself into my sister's upbringing, allowing the arrangement to proceed smoothly and without further complication for everyone involved. This mutual decision created a fragile equilibrium that held for years, shielding all parties from the potential fallout. As for the wedding itself, my father-in-law's presence was minimal and perfunctory. He didn't attend the actual ceremony, arriving only for a fleeting 20 minutes afterward. In that brief window, he presented us with a wedding gift, offered his blessings in a somewhat formal manner, and then departed hastily to catch a scheduled flight, vanishing back into the periphery of our lives as quickly as he'd appeared. Reflecting on these details now, I can't help but feel a profound sense of disorientation, as if the foundation of my reality has shifted beneath me. The layers of secrecy that enveloped this truth for so long, spanning from my parents' cover-up about the hair dye to the broader concealment of the affair, highlight how deeply people will go to protect what they perceive as fragile peace. Yet, in doing so, they've inadvertently created a chasm of mistrust that I'm now grappling with. My mother's actions, while human and flawed, cast a shadow over the pedestal I'd placed her on, forcing me to reconcile the loving parent I knew with the complexities of her choices. Similarly, my father's silence, born perhaps out of a desire to spare me pain, feels like a withheld piece of my own identity. And my father-in-law's detachment, while understandable given the circumstances, underscores the emotional distance that has always characterized his role in my husband's family. The wedding memory, once a joyful milestone, now carries a tinge of irony, his quick exit symbolizing the fleeting intersections of our lives before this revelation pulled everything into sharp, uncomfortable focus. It's a lot to process, and as I sit with these facts, I find myself oscillating between anger at the deceptions and a reluctant empathy for the difficult positions everyone was in. The affair's ripple effects have now reached me, demanding that I navigate this new terrain with care, even as I yearn for the simplicity of ignorance. Still, understanding the motivations behind these choices, the fear of disruption, the hope for stability, helps me begin to piece together a path forward, one that honors the past without letting it define our future entirely. My husband's parents are divorced now and aren't on good terms at all, so the family vacations were usually just my husband, my mother-in-law, my brother-in-law and his wife, and for the last 2 years, me as well. My mother-in-law told me that after the wedding, she'd suspected that my sister might be her husband's daughter since that's actually the reason they got divorced all those years ago. He'd confessed to her that he'd had an affair and the woman he'd been involved with was also pregnant. He'd lied to her saying that he wanted to be with her, but in reality he just needed an excuse to divorce her. My mother-in-law didn't ask him anything about it further and let him go. He continued to be a part of his sons' lives even though he'd moved to Europe. He'd call them often and would attend all the important events of their lives but wouldn't stay for long since he didn't want to bother his ex-wife. He'd visit once or twice a year and would stay in a hotel so that he could meet his sons during that time, but that was about it. So naturally, my husband and his brother weren't close to their dad, but he still was a part of their lives, which is how they eventually managed to find out about the connection they had with my sister. My mother-in-law told me that a few weeks after our wedding, she'd had her doubts about my sister's lineage and had even spoken to her ex-husband about it. She hadn't spoken to him for years after their divorce, but this is what finally made her talk to him since it was that important. She told him all about my mother, whatever she'd been able to learn from me, and he confirmed that she was the woman he'd had an affair with. She told my husband about it immediately, and around a month later, my husband and his family had reached out to my sister to talk about this. And while she'd been skeptical initially, she'd eventually agreed to get a paternity test, and as it turns out, my father-in-law was indeed the father of all three of them: my husband, his brother, and my sister. That was the reason my husband had started acting really weird whenever I brought up my sister in conversations after we got married. It all finally made sense, but now nothing makes sense to me on a personal level anymore. In just one phone call, I learned that my mother had cheated on my father and had lied to me ever since I was 10 years old. Admittedly, she just lied about her hair color, but I'm still in shock. Not just that, but also my husband, his entire family, and my entire family, my sister and my father, have been lying to me for so long. It's been almost a year since our wedding, and they've all been hiding things from me for that long. My head hurts every time I try to make sense of it all, and I just feel like I'm caught up in some soap opera type drama right now. Everyone has been trying to get through to me for 2 whole days now since I haven't been responding to any calls or texts ever since I learned the truth, but I just don't have anything to say to anyone right now. I haven't even opened their texts, and it just all keeps piling up. I haven't been able to leave the house either, and I just keep trying to go back in my head and replay all my interactions with my dad, my sister, my husband, my mother-in-law, my brother-in-law, and even his wife. Every single one of them had been in on this secret apart from me, and I can't imagine why they think hiding this from me was okay. I feel so stupid that I never even picked up on anything, but truth be told, they'd all been really good at keeping this secret, and really this is all just so messed up that nobody in their right mind would even imagine that something like this can happen to them. I'm just so done right now. All I want to do is take off by myself and clear my head. I know it seems really weird for me to say that when I just confessed that I haven't been able to even go out of my house yet after what I've learned, but I really do think a few days away from everything will help me clear my head. I used to do this back when I was in college whenever things got too overwhelming. I just take off by myself and go hiking or something for a few days. It was reckless and risky, but I survived. So I've been thinking about doing that once again. The only thing that's been stopping me is that I have to think about my family and the effect that my sudden disappearance without any explanation might have on them, especially after what I've just learned. I don't want to let them know where I am though. I don't think they deserve to know because after everything that's happened, I know that if they're going to keep secrets from me, then so can I. I'm just a little conflicted because I'm so angry and hurt that my judgment's been clouded by my feelings. I know they'll be very worried if they can't find me at home, and probably still are worried since I haven't been responding to them. I just don't know what to do right now. On one hand, I really want to hurt them and make them panic when they won't be able to find me once they come back home. I want them to feel the way I am right now, but I know I'm a grown woman and that's a really juvenile thing to do, just run away to get people worried. So I don't know what to do with if I took off by myself without an explanation. Alright, so I did go away for a few days. I went camping with strangers. One of my friends organizes these things, and luckily the day after my post, they were all going to start, so I decided to join at the last minute, and it was a good decision. Being in nature made me forget about my life for a bit. I know that this sounds really weird and dramatic, but that's actually what happened, and I'm happy that I decided to do it. I'd also uninstalled all my social media apps and had continued to ignore all calls and texts. The signal strength was weak there anyway, so I didn't have to worry much. I was able to distance myself from everyone and everything, and I really needed that to think freely. I was away for 3 days and came back yesterday. I didn't go home but decided to stay at a hotel because despite everything, I'm still not ready to face my family. I know they'll be worried, but I think it's time I put my own feelings first, and that's what I'm doing. I did check out the messages that everyone had been sending me though. My husband had told me that they'll be back on the very next flight and was apologizing profusely for everything, so I'm guessing that he's back now. I'm kind of glad I didn't go back home yet because I really don't think I want to talk to him right now, let alone forgive him. It's all the same for everyone else as well. Everyone's apologizing and asking me where I am, begging me to respond because they're all really worried. I don't really want to respond to any of them because whatever their intentions were, they still lied to me. I know now that they were all just trying to protect me from the shock of it all, but I'd rather just have found out earlier than this way. They lied to me for a whole year, and now they expect me to just forgive them and trust them again. Yeah, right. More than my husband and his family, I'm just disappointed that even my own family lied to me. I don't understand why they felt the need to. Honestly, I'm a grown woman, and I think I can handle the truth, especially when it's about something like this. And for my husband and his family to just take off on a family vacation with my sister without even bothering to tell me the truth first, yeah, that's just messed up. I'm hurt, and I still feel betrayed by everything that's happening, but being away from everything has sort of put things into perspective as well. This is why even though I feel considerably lighter, I still feel confused about what to do next. I know they didn't intend to hurt me and just wanted to protect me from the truth, but I also feel so furious that they did even this to me in the first place. I finally came back home today, and everyone's here. I mean everyone, my husband, his mother, his brother, wife, my dad, and my sister. I was a little taken aback when I was welcomed by everyone, and it was really overwhelming since everyone had pulled me into a hug and was bombarding me with questions about where I'd been and simultaneously apologizing for whatever they'd done. It felt like it was too much for me to handle, so I told them I needed some time by myself right now, and I needed them to calm down because they were overwhelming me, and I wasn't in the right emotional state for them. But I could see that they were all really emotional, and I won't deny it, I myself felt really emotional as well. I couldn't stop loving these people just because of what they'd done. Yeah, I know they'd all messed up big time, but now that I know their reasons, it's too damn hard to hold it against them. An hour after I came back and had some time to myself to think about what exactly I was going to speak to my family about, I decided to finally talk to them. They were all sitting out there in the living room not talking to each other, and it really felt like they were at a funeral or something. That's how quiet and solemn the room was, which is how I'm guessing it had been for the most part while I was gone. I felt a little guilty, but then I remembered that I did what I had to and had no reason to feel bad, especially after their lies. Even though I already knew what they were going to tell me, I still decided to ask why exactly had they been lying to me. There were a few minutes of silence, but then my dad started talking, and he told me that one of the biggest reasons that they kept this a secret from me was because they knew how much I loved my mother, and they believed I wouldn't be able to take the news of her having an affair well enough, which was true. I hadn't been able to take it well because it just sucked that the woman I idolized the most had cheated on my father. I loved her more than life itself, but after that I just didn't know what to think of her anymore, and I think everyone present in that room knew that my mother's infidelity would be the biggest shock for me. They'd been lying to me so that I'd be able to preserve my mother's memory and wouldn't let this piece of information ruin it for me because despite everything, she'd always tried to be a good mother, and I'll concede she was a great mom, but it still sucked that they'd lied to me for so long and had even gone on vacation without me. My husband explained that the purpose of that vacation was to come up with a way to tell me because the situation itself was so complicated, and they didn't realize that when I got to know that they'd been lying to me for a year, I'd probably be even more hurt than I would have been had they just been honest with me. They admitted that they'd screwed this thing up by trying to protect me and shield me from the truth instead of just being honest with me. This was a new and complex situation for everyone involved, and the longer they waited for the right time, the more difficult it became for them to tell me the truth. They'd made up their mind that after the vacation, they'd come back and tell me everything. My husband also wanted to bond with my sister, but I guess she's our sister now, which just feels so weird to say that I can't even wrap my head around it. Even she told me that there were multiple times when she wanted to tell me, but there was just no way she could bring herself to say it because she herself was struggling to come to terms with it. I forgive her, there's no question about it because she's just 17, and her whole world has just turned topsy-turvy with this revelation. The man she thought was her dad is not her real dad, and her supposed brother-in-law is her actual half-brother. If I was 17 and going through something like this, then I probably wouldn't know what to say or do either, so I understand why she didn't say a word about it. After that discussion, everyone else headed home so that my husband and I could have some time to ourselves and discuss what we wanted to do next. Once they were all gone, he sat me down and told me that he was really and truly sorry for lying and taking the lie so far. He said that he'd accept whatever decision I made about our marriage, even if I wanted to divorce him. He had tears in his eyes but was trying his best to hold back so I don't feel guilty, and I think that was my breaking point. I broke down sobbing, and so did he because despite what had happened, I didn't want to give him up. I just couldn't. I loved him too much, and I know I'll get a load of hate for this, but I really don't care. I know a lot of you wanted me to leave him, but I'm not doing that because families are complex, and things aren't always black or white. I know that, and this couldn't have been easy for anyone involved. I know he lied to me, and so did everyone else, but they lied to protect me and not hurt me. The situation itself is so messed up that even I don't know what I would have done had I been in my husband's place or my dad's. Have I forgiven everyone entirely? No, obviously not. I still have so many questions and so much to say because this is not something that people can come to terms with in just one day. I don't think anyone will ever understand exactly what I'm feeling right now, and neither do I have the right words to explain it. But what I do know is that with some time and effort, I know I'll be able to fix my relationship not just with my husband but with the rest of my family as well. I can't forgive them just now, and I'll definitely never be able to forget any of this, but I think I'll be able to accept that this happened and move on eventually. Nevertheless, I'm still willing to give everyone a second chance. I'd like to thank everyone for all the kind messages and the overwhelming love and support that most of you have shown me. It means the world to me, and I'm doing a lot better than I was back then. There are also the usual hateful and judgmental people as well who believe that my marriage won't last and that my family is going to screw me over again, so thanks for the hate as well. The first thing that I did was get in touch with a therapist. Of course I have solo sessions, but my husband and I also attend marriage counseling, Not just because we have problems in our relationship, but because we want to work on it and save our relationship. I know a lot of people still believe that getting marriage counseling means that a relationship has soured, but honestly I think every couple going through a rough patch should try it out instead of giving up immediately. My husband and I are together and are just as much in love as we were the day we got married. It's a little strange to know that we have the same sister now, but we're trying to come to terms with it. He's trying to build a relationship with her, and I'm trying to fix mine. Since these are waters we've never navigated, it's all going well so far, and hopefully we'll all be back to normal someday, whatever normal means for families like ours. I'm also trying to fix my relationship with my dad. I'm just as cordial as I used to be with my husband's family earlier. Families are complicated, but I'm glad I have the people that I do because despite everything, they still love me, and I love them. I know it's really messy, but it's mine.